Roshi when he was first ordained as a Zen priest about 50 years ago. Roshi.
Wow, green shoot.
Haircut, green shoot, and his mother and Maizumi Roshi. Yeah. We're just going to show it to Linda too. See? Isn't that great? Look at this picture, Linda.
Who is that?
This one here is Roshi when he was, in his mid-20s.
Yeah.
Ordained as a priest, and his mother's in the middle, and Maizumi Roshi.
Oh, cool.
Like 50 years ago.
Yeah. Beautiful picture.
Great.
Yeah.
How old were you when you were ordained?
Early 20s.
Early 20s.
That was Zen Center, Los Angeles. My father had just passed away. My mother was still alive.
I was 27 when I was ordained. I was 27 when I was ordained.
27, yeah.
So my late 20s.
Mm-hmm. Genmaicha. This is what I used to have growing up. We'd have leftover cold rice for dinner, and we'd make tea, genmaicha, in a pot. And you pour the hot tea over the cold rice, and that's how we would eat the rice. All right, well, here we are. It is Friday. I can't believe how fast the time was flying, as always. It's going fast. Nice to see Linda and Steve online. on the other day, when I gave my teisho about Devil Girl Yoshihime, I forgot to say that she was at Tokeiji Monastery, which was the first monastery founded by a woman abbess. And it became a place like a domestic shelter for women who were being abused by their maybe samurai husbands, I don't know, and who were seeking divorce or who were divorced. So evidently it became known as the Divorce Temple. But,
Yeah, that's really
so it's in Kamakura, Japan, which is by the ocean, and I would love to go visit someday, right? I was just remembering, it was 9 years to this month, about this time, that Julie and I found ourselves in Japan. We went to visit my family on my mother's side in Hiroshima. And my sister was there, my cousin, and their husbands, and Julie and me. And so we met them, and we went to Eiheiji. That's when I don't know if I said this on Tuesday, but we went to Eiheiji, Dogen's temple. And that was really a highlight of the trip. In addition to meeting my relatives, who I really hadn't met. They spoke Japanese and very little English, and I spoke this much Japanese, that somehow we were able to communicate. But going to Eiheiji was really a wonderful experience, right? Because Dogen is the founder of Soto Zen, a famous temple. There were a lot of young male monks there. If you plan ahead, you can actually stay like overnight. But we didn't plan ahead. We just went to visit. And we went to this one temple, because there's a complex of temples in Eiheiji, where Dogen's relics were. And there were some monks, young monks, who were cleaning it, and they were talking and kind of laughing, and not a lot, but I was just surprised, right? Because this is where Dogen's relics were. So we didn't go in the temple, but there was a huge incense burner right outside the temple, just big metal container with a lot of incense ash, a lot of incense had been burned there, so big. And there was incense, so Julie and I offered incense, and we did our 3 bows right there by the huge urn. And there was something very special about that place. It just felt like there was a lot of energy there. Which reminded me of when Roshi and I were in Israel, and we went to the Mount of the Beatitudes. Is that what it's called? The mountain where Jesus gave his sermon on the Beatitudes. And there's a huge temple there now on the top of the mountain. And so we went in, and it was okay. But I went out, there was a grove of trees, and I thought, I'm just gonna sit under those trees, because he was probably walking around here, and who knows, maybe even sitting under these trees. So I just sat for about 5 minutes, and I felt like I'd been, like now, how it is now after so many days of sesshin, there's this kind of some kind of buzz. It can happen, it doesn't always happen. But that's how I felt, just sitting there under the beautiful trees. And also when we did our bows there at Eiheiji, there was this energy there that was a beautiful thing. When Pearl gave her talk on Sunday, she said, she read from her book, she's writing about, living in a Korean Zen monastery here in Chicago. She lived there for I don't know how many years. But she said the first thing she learned when she entered, the temple, someone showed her how to put her palms together. And I found that incredibly moving. That simple act of just putting your palms together. And I've been reading this book, Eihei Dogen's The Roots of Goodness. Uchiyama Roshi is commenting on this final teaching of Dogen, which was also the final teaching of Shakyamuni Buddha to their disciples. The roots of goodness. There are 8 qualities of a great person. 8 qualities of a great person. So Uchiyama Roshi had this poem that he wrote just before he died. And it is called Tada Ogamu, just holding precious. Just holding precious. Meeting right hand with left hand, just holding precious. God and Buddha becoming one, just holding precious. Everything encountered becoming one, just holding precious. All things come together as one, just holding precious. Life becoming life, just holding precious. Just holding precious, right? Each moment, oneness, and not oneness, right? So, how's everybody feeling? I was a little sleepy this morning. I don't know about you, but anyway, I'm a little sleepy. Okay, I'll try to keep you awake during this Dharma talk. It's not as juicy as the last Dharma talk, but anyway, you'll have to see the Dharma talk the other day. I thought I was giving the talk on Tuesday, and I was going to start with this quote. I heard Joan Halifax. I happened to be looking at Instagram, even though we're supposed to be taking a little fast, a little social media fast. But there she was. Why I opened it, I'm not sure. But anyway, and this is what she said. I believe we as practitioners, as Buddhists, Christians, Jews, nones also, it's really important now to see clearly and deeply into the unacknowledged and damaging social structures that we live in at this time, and to understand how the frameworks implicit within our political, social, and economic, as well as ethical social structures that undergird our very lives, undermine the lives of so many. I think this is really important at this time. When I had to listen to it a couple of times, and it was really good actually to write it down, because there's a lot packed in there, right? I'll read it again. I believe we as practitioners, as Buddhists, Christians, Jews, nones, also she includes non-religious. It's really important now to see clearly and deeply into the unacknowledged and damaging social structures that we live in at this time, and to understand how the frameworks implicit within our political, social, and economic, as well as ethical social structures that undergird our very lives, undermine the lives of so many. I think this is really important at this time. That's like becoming awake to our lives. And what habitual ways of thinking and being are running our lives. Because this culture that we live in, as she says, implicit, which means we can't really see it. And it goes through everything: political, social, economic, ethical, social structures. That is the basis of our entire lives, undermine the lives of so many, even our lives too. So it's really an act of resistance to see the reality of our lives, our true nature. A resistance against the structure that we've grown up with. Unacknowledged and damaging social structures. It was really sobering, right? So anything that is conditioned in our lives that we don't even think about and we just react, right? We need to examine, pause, and go, well, that's interesting. That's interesting. So this practice that we have is so important, because this is what we do. We're trying to be mindful of how we live our lives so we can be of benefit to others and ourselves. It's very important during these times that we live in. I didn't realize over 1 million people have died in the Ukraine war. 1 million. That is crazy. So we see in war the workings of the 3 poisons: greed, anger, and ignorance. And we can, if we're mindful, we can see it how it works in our lives too. So in Sesshin, we're shining the light inward, illuminating darkness. It's a radical act. So we read the Genjo Koan yesterday for the sutra reading. I love this passage. To study the Buddha way is to study the self. To study the Buddha way. This is the Buddha way. We're studying ourselves. And what makes us tick or not? What makes us stuck? What makes us fearful? What makes us sad? What makes us angry? Just noticing. So we can maybe change. If we don't see it, no way are we gonna change. To study the self is to forget the self. All right, so we're studying it, and then Dogen says, okay, you've studied it, you've looked at it with a microscope, you're catching things, or not, but you're still, practicing, right? And then he says, forget the self, which is amazing, right? We don't have to just be stuck, be so analytical all the time. We can stop. Because, because he says to forget the self is to be actualized by the myriad things, or as we read, the 10,000 dharmas. To forget the self, then we can let the world, we can learn from the world. Otherwise, we're just focused here, right here. And that only takes you so far, okay? When actualized by myriad things, or the 10,000 dharmas, your body and mind, as well as the bodies and minds of others, drop away. When actualized by the 10,000 dharmas, your body and mind, as well as the bodies and minds of others, drop away. No trace of realization remains. And this no trace continues endlessly. So we're not attached to the realization, right? We're not holding on. We can let it go and go, wow. And then. So that's just so beautiful to me, right? You can let go. And somehow, things are taken care of. Somehow, I don't know. So the studying the self is really great because in our practice as Zen peacemakers, we work on not turning away from things that are uncomfortable. We're trying to open our hearts. And I just noticed yesterday during Samu, the two Jackies were down helping me with all my hula stuff. I've got a bunch of stuff there. They had already started by the time I got down, which was fine. And then I thought, I don't think I'm needed here. And as I walked out, I said, okay, I'm gonna go now. There's all this stuff, And then I got to the stairs, going upstairs, and I thought, why am I leaving right now? This is my stuff. And I thought, that's interesting. So I walked back down and we got it done. I know where things should go and stuff like that, but that's interesting because I have long avoided that task, right? It's a procrastination. And mindfulness actually helps your brain, but so do two good supportive friends. How that help you, right? Because they were there and it is beautiful down there now. I have more to do with those bins, but the wall of the book is great. So this observing difficult things, You know, it was just a slight, I could have forgotten it and walked upstairs and forgotten about it. But, you know, I've been practicing with this, opening to uncomfortable things. And I just took this class, I think I told you, on aging with Eve Marco. And Eve, she loves to hang with that kind of uncomfortable stuff. She's like, I'm not turning away. No, this is the juicy part right here. I'm just really impressed with that. And I love that about Eve. You know, and when people start talking about love and light, she says, well, I'm going to throw a monkey wrench into that. And then she talks about, you know, the other side too. So it's really great. She's not zealous. She's just a seasoned peacemaker, Zen peacemaker, who has witnessed horrible things, right? With Bernie, how many times have they gone to Auschwitz, you know, and so many bearing witness retreats. So that bearing witness to difficult things is building a muscle, right? It's building a muscle that I think needs to be strengthened. Because, you know, we are going through some interesting times now. And I noticed that even in myself, feelings of unworthiness arises, right? And that's something to look at. That's interesting. And I was rereading Trungpa Rinpoche's take on basic goodness from his Sacred Path of the Warrior book. This is the first book. I asked Roshi, you know, I met him like a couple years before he ordained. I was 19 and he was 20. And so when we went our separate ways after dating for a year, right? And then we came back together again about 10 or so years later. And I asked him, you know, what book would be good to start reading, you know, because I knew that he had been ordained as a Zen priest, but he wasn't practicing at that time. He was an artist. He was a wild and crazy artist, but he was a good artist. I was really impressed with his paintings. So that was another thing that attracted me to him. And anyway, he told me, you should start with the Sacred Path of the Warrior by Trungpa Rinpoche, because I had not really read any Dharma books. And I did, and it was really great because it was about working with fear and uncomfortable things. And I was working as the director or the executive director of the food bank at that time in Portland, Oregon. And one thing that was so uncomfortable for me was working with personnel. you know, because sometimes you have to say hard things to them that they don't want to hear, right? And so you have to. So I noticed that in me, that kind of fear, or, you know, because I'm a people pleaser in general. That's what I was, really. Anyway, Trungpa Rinpoche says about basic goodness, in terms of trying to find your basic goodness, because it's there, he says, when you don't punish or condemn yourself, when you relax more and appreciate your body and mind, you begin to contact the fundamental notion of basic goodness in yourself. That's interesting. When you're kind to yourself, you start to get in touch with your basic goodness. Is this new for anybody, by the way? Okay, good, because he says, so it is extremely important to be willing to open yourself to yourself. Developing tenderness towards yourself allows you to see both your problems and your potential accurately. Because that's what we want to see. We want to see what is, right? Accurately. Not what we think it is or what we hope it is, but what it really is, accurately. You don't feel that you have to ignore your problems or exaggerate your potential. You don't have to ignore it or exaggerate it. That kind of gentleness towards yourself and appreciation of yourself is very necessary. The sacred path of a warrior. It provides the ground for helping yourself and others. Who knew being kind to yourself was a good thing? And the first step in realizing basic goodness is also appreciating what you have. And the sitting practice helps to see, oh wow, I have so much in my life that I'm so grateful for. And basic goodness is closely connected to the idea of bodhicitta, or awakened heart. Such awakened heart, Trungpa Rinpoche says, comes from being willing to face your state of mind. Can be scary. You should examine yourself and ask how many times you have tried to connect with your heart. Good question. Fully and truly. How often have you turned away because you feared you might discover something terrible about yourself? And then he has this beautiful quote. As human beings, we have a working basis within ourselves that allows us to uplift our state of existence and cheer up fully. That working basis is always available to us. We have a mind and a body which are very precious to us. Because we have a mind and body, we can comprehend this world. Existence is wonderful and precious. We don't know how long we will live, so while we have our life, why not make use of it? Before we even make use of it, why don't we appreciate it? And he says in the Shambhala tradition, I think it's our tradition too, the discipline for developing both gentleness towards ourselves and appreciation of our world is the sitting practice of meditation, zazen. And he's saying lack of this gentleness comes from relying on habitual patterns of behavior. So we have to be able to see it. So, what are the roots of goodness anyway? What are the 8 qualities of a great person? Does anybody want to know? Okay, so it's interesting, right, that they both, Shakyamuni Buddha and Dogen, gave these teachings at the end of their lives. They're like saying, you know, in a nutshell, these are it. Practice, practice, practice. Right? This is my final teaching to you. So the first is, so it can be looked at qualities, but it can also be looked at as realization or awarenesses that we're developing, that we're practicing. The first is having few desires. Or as Uchiyama Roshi says, that is not wildly chasing after the objects of one's desires, you know, taste, touch, feel, the 5 senses. One whose heart acts with few desires is always at peace. So it's not like saying you shouldn't have any desires, but it's how tightly you're holding on and wanting. And 2, knowing one has enough. The Dharma of knowing when one has enough is precisely where you will find the greatest wealth, happiness, and peace of mind. One who doesn't know what is sufficient will never be at ease and always be unsatisfied, even if they live in a gorgeous mansion. And they correlate with the first paramita, the practices of a bodhisattva, of generosity, dana, generosity. That the welfare of others be on par with the welfare of yourself. And the capacity to give of oneself in a wide range of creative ways. And one more word about generosity, right? Expansiveness, sharing, loving. Loving is the whole basis of this path. And it's to stretch ourselves and our understanding of who we are and who others are. To stretch ourselves and our understanding. Also, generosity is the fine art of not taking offense. That's really a great practice. Even though my brother doesn't talk to me, I'm not going to take offense. The third is appreciating serenity, quietude. And that's what I've been really appreciating in this session. Just sitting in the quiet, really nice. So it's also enjoying peace of mind and stop comparing yourself with others and return to your own true reality. Isn't that interesting? Appreciating serenity, quietude. Number 4, making diligent effort. Making diligent, gon shojin, one of persevering in all matters, continually striving to carry out deeds that are true and wholesome, is making diligent effort. And that correlates with virya, the paramita on energy, the practice of the bodhisattva. Energy or zeal. And Shantideva, who's this great 8th century Indian philosopher, Buddhist monk, teacher, he said in his Way of the Bodhisattva, that's also a fantastic book, Way of the Bodhisattva, he says, he defines energy as the endeavor to do what is skillful, and juxtaposes against it sloth, laziness, despondency, defeatism, apathy, and self-contempt. And the self-contempt is the thought that I am incapable of anything significant and can't expect myself to accomplish much. That's such a good one, right? Self-contempt. Yeah, that's strive against self-contempt. That's making diligent effort. And then in his chapter, he's got this wonderful, it says, it reads like an inspirational lecture. He's saying, hey, you, expecting results without effort, so sensitive. You in the clutches of death, acting like an immortal. Hey, sufferer, you are destroying yourself. No, not Shantideva. And also along with this, because they say if you practice one of these paramitas, and they're saying the same thing here, you're practicing all of them. So I see Kshanti Paramita also here, which is about patience and tolerance. That's a practice of a bodhisattva. Patience, tolerance, endurance, constancy, right? In Buddhism, we rely on this practice whenever we're in some difficulty. Gotta practice patience. Patience is a good one. And it could be emotional, it could be physical pain, or what comes up with others. Patience is a great one. So, Kasanti. Kasant means unaffected by, able to bear, able to withstand. This enables bodhisattvas to continue pursuing universal enlightenment in spite of enormous difficulty. So this is where we have to train ourselves not to turn away from difficulties. This is the practice. How would we practice patience without difficulties? Right? Who would want to practice patience without difficulties? And the ultimate commitment is to keep the heart open. And sometimes we can be really despairing because times are so hard. Shantideva actually mocks the destructive habit of despair in the face of hardship. This is what he says. Rhetorically, he asks, if there is a solution to your problem, then what is the point of dejection? Makes sense. If there's a solution, why be dejected? And he says, what is the point of dejection if there is no solution? What is the point of dejection if there is no solution? The text goes on. There is nothing desirable in the state of dejection. There's nothing desirable. In other words, if you respond to difficulties primarily with depression and lamentation, with feelings of dejection or claims of unfair victimization, you will simply be wasting your time and deepening the wound. The second arrow, right? The first arrow is that wound, and then you're just deepening it by continuing it with the story. For He says, for if something can now be done about the problem, get busy, do something constructive. And if this happens to be an unavoidable situation, one completely beyond your control, there is still no point in wallowing in dejection. Find some path of human well-being that you can control and get back into the movement of life. Do what you can. Overindulgence in the emotions of loss brings about further loss. Our instincts in this respect are frequently self-destructive. From a Buddhist point of view, living wisely would entail transforming the way we respond to difficulty. Pause. What am I doing here? Okay, come back. Okay, I'm back. Let's get, I can help. And Shantideva says it's a paradox. Only through suffering is there escape. Only through suffering is there escape. One must directly acknowledge, face up to it, and press through it deliberately until we find an adequate means of dealing with suffering. And this could mean talking to a counselor, a psychiatrist, about your difficulty as you try to solve it, right? As you try to work through it. All right, the fifth quality of a great person, not losing sight of true Dharma. Dharma meaning, Buddha Dharma meaning the true reality of life, not losing sight of the true reality of life. The sixth is concentrating on settling in dhyana. Dhyana meaning meditation. So it's practicing zazen. And contemplating. It says having contemplated thoroughly the functioning of one's mind, you will come to know well the rise and fall of all worldly phenomena. Yes, having contemplated thoroughly the functioning of one's mind, you will come to know well the rise and fall of all worldly phenomena, because that's what's going on in our lives. You see that when you're sitting. And Shantideva says, the mind should be watched with all one's effort, so that, bound to the great post of reflection on the Dharma, it does not break loose. The wild monkey mind. Monkey. Changing the patterns and content of one's mind in any fundamental way was seen to require enormous strength and energy. Think about that devil girl, man. She was strong, right? Meditation was considered the most effective antidote to the three poisons. Greed, pulling the world towards, aversion, pushing the world away, and delusion, oblivious of our true circumstances or hiding in denial. And the seventh quality is practicing wisdom. The seventh quality is to embody the wisdom of liberation from one's attachments And realization or wisdom based on hearing the teaching well, deeply contemplating, and sincerely practicing. So practicing, sincerely practicing. And the final, no engaging in useless argument. No engaging in useless argument, but rather completely penetrating the true reality of all things, which is big. Truly penetrating, completely penetrating the true reality of all things. And so within each of this, you say all are contained. So it's actually 64. So I want to end just, Uchiyama Roshi has just put a beautiful finale to this that I'll read. These 8 qualities of a great person are 8 aspects of Dharma. Since our practice is one of putting this Dharma, the reality of life, to work in our day-to-day life, our practice is limitless and infinite. Precisely because our practice functions in an unlimited and infinite way, there is the realization of a great person. Precisely because our practice functions in an unlimited and infinite way, there is the realization of a great person. And this Dharma, the reality of life, Seimei no Jitsubutsu, never means just our physical life, nor our sense of just surviving. As I have been saying all along, this life is the life of the whole universe. It is the life including of all realms and of all sentient beings. Always aiming at the true reality of life and practicing it are what is most important for us as disciples of the Buddha. Always aiming at the true reality of life and practicing it are what is most important for us as disciples of the Buddha. This is the supreme realization and essence of the Tathagata's profound wisdom of the true Dharma. Precisely because it is the living force of the universe, it transcends both life and earth. Neither is it born nor does it die. And he continues, as for us, as the final testament of Dogen Zenji, it is imperative for us to see this as the most important teaching, the teaching of the true reality of life. And to practice and realize this teaching of the 8 qualities of a great person. And Dogen concludes with, this is Dogen's quote, "It is critical for us to study and practice these qualities, to expand their merit in each successive life, to realize deepest wisdom, and finally, just as the Buddha did, to expound that teaching for all sentient beings." Well, we've got some time to discuss questions.
I don't have a question, I just want to say thank you. That was just beautiful.
I couldn't have done it without all of you here.
Roshi, when you were talking about the times that we live in, it reminded me of something Thomas Merton said in the early 70s. He was eating breakfast and he was disturbed by a radio and how nobody can be peace anywhere if you can't go out and have breakfast without being disturbed by a radio. It's just, we've come a long way since a radio in the background.
So say that again, just, I don't know, did everybody hear that online? Okay, no, would you say it a little louder?
He was upset because when he was out having breakfast in a restaurant, they were playing a radio, and all he wanted was to have a quiet breakfast. But he was talking about the times that are constantly being bombarded with, in that case, of radio commercials. Now we can't walk outside the door. It's everywhere. It always has been everywhere, I guess.
Right, right.
It's just more extreme.
So isn't it nice when we're practicing oryoki and
It's
just
beautiful.
eating in silence and not just eating and tasting the food? Thank you, Tenzo.
Very quiet zone.
It's beautiful.
Really nothing.
It's also lovely, and thank you, Roshi. It was such a moving talk. When you mentioned gratitude, it just really hit me. It was a good era, and it really is just waking up in the morning. It's so amazing, you know. Well, for me, when I open my eyes, and there it is again. Another opportunity to just love on, you know, people and things and practice. But the oryoki, since it was mentioned, I just think it's so beautiful to pay attention to each other. Like in the silence, there's so much room to check and see if everybody's moving along and to wait for each other to be, you know, just, it's symbiotic. It's just so beautiful I'm not eating. We're eating, you know, we're nourishing together, you know, from Samu or from, we're all together. And I think people meet at the table, it's still sometimes a family tradition. You know, I work with families, but that doesn't mean they're paying attention to each other. You know, being around the table together is such a tradition for many centuries and just eating together. But the oryoki is really special. You know, just being mindful, just like whose bowl do I have, and you know, and just really appreciating what everything tastes like. Flavors that I haven't tasted before, or maybe I wouldn't, or just it's so different than the feeling of aloneness or loneliness. It really is really wonderful. Yeah, I appreciate the taste very much.
I think this would be a good book to study, and Sky mentioned that, you know, because she's been our study steward. Yeah, I think this would be a great one to study.
Just thinking about what you just said about us nourishing ourselves together, and also the flow of life. Like you said something about if you experience loss, rather than dwelling in it, let go and return to life. The flow of life. I love that. And like, so I'm thinking about the flow of life and the ways that sashimi teach me about how to be in life and in the flow and connected, and how different that can be from my solitary life in my condo, where sometimes, you know, habits take over, and the systems we're in, the economic systems we're in, take over, and you know, I may decide to feel connected by purchasing something. That happens more than it should. That little click on Amazon or whatever. And I appreciate this opportunity to experience the flow of life in a natural and much more wholesome way. And it is a little bit of resistance to to experience this flow and this opportunity to open to true self. And there's not a whole lot of needs, as the first point he makes is
Having few desires.
there aren't that many desires, yeah, that are actually needs. Yeah, so thank you for that wonderful talk.
I appreciate, I can't remember exactly how it was phrased, but if there's a solution, there you go. If there isn't, then why worry about it? That's what I struggle with a lot. I've been noticing that some of my anxiety just shifts from this to that, whatever the day is. I always have to tell myself this too shall pass, because that feels like the biggest deal, but 2 days from now, I won't even remember what I was really anxious about. But just, it's helpful to hear that, and now it's practicing it.
Yeah, it's practice, you can't, like any new thing, you can't expect to get it like that. It's kind of a body thing, right? Like, I've made origami cranes before, right? I've been making them for one of my hula students who's getting married, making 1,000 of them. I made 2. So it's kind of like, I had to relearn how to make it, and repetition is really good. So opportunities to practice, you do it in small steps. I did like a part of it first. I did a bunch that, so my hands would get used to that. Then I did the next step. Then my hands got used to that, and then I did the next. At first I was very slow, but at the end I was pretty fast, right? So being patient and just going slow and, not judging, right? Just noticing this is up for you, okay? Breathe with it a bit, you're not gonna be equanimous right away. But with a practice, hopefully you are, but I mean, there's gonna be times when the shit is gonna hit the fan, and we practice for those moments. It's the little times that we're practicing so that when it does, we can be grounded, because we're gonna need our wits about us when that happens. Yeah.
It does take a long time.
And patience, right? It's
But
building patience.
anything worthwhile does, people who are athletes,
Yes,
they don't become super athletes in a year
Yes.
or 3 years.
yes,
It
yes,
takes
right.
dedication, practice.
Yes, it is. It's like a relationship. Because I'm in a relationship with you, and there's ups and downs in relationships. There are, right? But that's where patience comes in, the practice of patience. Lowering my standards. I had to add that, okay. Anyway,
Not taking
I'm
offense.
too, noticing that where I'm too wound up too, I don't have to be so I don't have to be so perfectionist, right? What's that about too? That's interesting, right?
I helped her to not be a perfectionist.
Right, so, yeah, baby steps to get it down, and then when it,
You talk to people and they say, I can't meditate, but they've tried it for a week.
yeah.
For some reason, it takes a commitment
Yeah.
for a long time.
It's hard when you're constantly have all these distractions and then you try to sit down. I mean, it's so difficult.
I think it's really hard by yourself.
Yes, I
Much harder by
You
yourself.
have to, and people who come here usually have, I've tried everything basically, and then it's like, okay, yeah, so, yeah, people have to want to do this, or it's not gonna take.
We're the last resort.
We're the last resort hotel here.
Well, that's-
Yeah.
Nothing else has worked.
I know, nothing else is work, I gotta try meditation, even though my mind is going bonkers, how is this gonna help, I have no idea. And that's great, actually, one bad thing, or many bad things, can lead to a good thing. You just never know, you just never know.
It's like, fine, I'll be a monk. That's the thing. And then you're like, well, I can just be me. That's what this is about.
Yeah.
And the sashimi is great because, the world went on without me. And that's important, to come from thinking I don't have time to meditate or time for myself, or time to sit. Well, my gosh, 7 days with the world functioning and the people in it and things going on, for whatever time I took away from it, all going well, they're all gonna be there, for me to latch onto again and get more attached to, but it just does show that, I can make a day, take a day and do a sashimi, privately, or an hour, certainly could do an hour after doing 7 days.
And being, having a commitment to trying something hard and opening your heart to it. And it might be really tightly closed, and knowing that it's a process that develops patience, which is something, we can all use. It's a virtue, right? It's really a virtue. Your beautiful Buddha natures are shining right now. Thank you very much. And lunch.
Prepare for lunch.
Thank you.
Yeah. Just look at this picture, oh my God.